WiDESIGN presents.
I visited countries for long enough to learn language, say something meaningful in it.
Definitely comes right out of Wikipedia.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third weekend of the Women in Design Fest 2022. I'm Bhuvana, your host, and I'm so delighted to have all of you join us today to listen to these wonderful women speakers and hope that you have been watching and enjoying the past sessions. We have so many more interesting sessions lined up for you today and for the next 4 weeks, so we hope you all enjoy it. The Women in Design Fest is brought to you by the UMO Design Foundation, a nonprofit that has been creating design awareness for over a decade through events, conferences, and design education. UMO is the force behind initiatives like the UX India Conference, the Women in Design Fest, the UMO Design School, UX in Collaborative, and Design Social. At UMO, our mission is to inspire and educate 1 million women to become designers by the year 2030. To take this forward, we aim to provide scholarships worth 150,000 US dollars to provide design education to women. I'm sorry. To provide design education to women aspirants through the UMO Design School and make them employable by 2022. At the UMO Design School, we aspire to sponsor design education for students who possess the right attitude but lack the financial ability. The courses are industry recognized and are taught by some of the finest mentors and academic partners. We welcome you to be a part of the UMO Design family by joining us as a partner, a mentor, or a volunteer. This year, the Women in Design Fest is spread over 7 weeks. Our first two sessions took place on the 19th and 26th of March. Today is our third segment, and we hope you all enjoy it. Today, we have some stellar women speakers Mansi, Marie, Bhakti, and Divya, who will share their journeys with us, particularly regarding a career transition from the field of engineering to user experience and other allied fields. So, before we begin today's session, I'd like to mention that each of our speakers will be taking a few questions after their talk. So, if you have any questions for our speakers today, please post them in the comments section so we can address them after the talk. So, now it's time for our first speaker. Joining us live is Mansi Dave. Mansi is a UX designer with Mindtree. I welcome Mansi to begin today's session. Over to you, Mansi.
Thank you so much, Bhuvna, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you, the UMO Design and UX India team. And I'm grateful to be a part of this amazing movement. And let me share my screen quickly. Okay, so as Bhuvna said that I am a UX designer. I carry a 3+ years of experience. I transitioned from engineering to UI and then to UX, and then I'm working with Mindtree currently. So that is it about me. Now moving forward, today I'm going to talk about designing accessible and inclusive products. So as a designer, I think it is our prime responsibility to have a proper and inclusive user group so that people can access products and services with ease. So we are going to it's not a talk, but it's just a little communication and about something that I literally feel that we all designers should pledge and should work on these kind of things. So what is accessibility? Accessibility means that people with disability can interact, perceive, understand, and use your product with ease and with intuitive behavior. It helps them use the products and services with ease, obviously. So this is about accessibility. So we generally, some of you might be designers and have this accessibility in practices, but I feel that uh, sometimes as a designer we always have this constricted thinking while defining and designing the products. So I myself was having this problem because we are from the category of the organic users. I think this is where empathy comes into picture, and I was lacking in that field. So 2 months back, 2 to 3 months back, my dad had the temporary vision impairment. So it was very difficult for my family to even have him doing the small and daily workarounds in the house itself. So at that time I came to know about that it is very difficult for someone who is having some kind of special ability. I won't say disability, it breaks my heart sometimes. But yes, if someone is having special ability, how or she would carry some of the daily workarounds, and it is very difficult for them to use the digital products as well. And life is also very unpredictable, I feel, because no one knows that what happens tomorrow. So it is better that we keep all of these things in mind and design our products to uh, delight our customers and users as well. So why accessibility? So there are 21 million population who are having minor to severe disability in India only. According to the statistics, I just checked it yesterday night from the internet, and the source is given here. And it is very difficult for us to even think about it. So this also creates a different group of major user category for which we should take this data in account while designing the product. So this is a small video, small initiative that has been carried out from our government. So I'll just quickly play it. I hope you are able
Why
to
are
see
designers
this.
designing stuff that destroys the environment in its making?
Disability is certainly not inability. If you have proper accessibilities, like a metro, and someone great has said, मेरे मन में विचार आया, क्यों न हम हमारे देश में विकलांग की जगह पर दिव्यांग शब्द का उपयोग करें। ये वो लोग हैं जिनके पास वो ऐसा एक अंग है या एक से अधिक ऐसे अंग हैं जिसमें दिव्यता है, दिव्य शक्ति का संचार है, जो हम सामान्य शरीर वालों के पास नहीं है। So I think I'll go by that.
So that was it. We have heard a lot about Digital India campaign. We have heard about Startup India campaign, but there is also a campaign which is initiated by our government called Sugamya Bharat Yojana, and this was the video about it. So there are things that are has been initiated from the government side as well, and they are having some practices under this umbrella, and they are taking small baby steps towards it. But I think when it comes to technology, when it comes to building the products which also last long for the future generations as well, we should take accessibility in account as well. And so how do we do it? So there is also a saying that if usability is important, then I think accessibility is more important, because your product is usable, but if it is not accessible, so there is also if that is not accessible, then there is some question marks in the usability perspective as well. So we should take all of this in account while designing the product. So how do we do it? So there are 4 stages of design that we all do. That is define, design, develop, and this is the after design. So today we are going to talk about the 2 stages, that is define and design. So define, how do we define with accessibility in mind? So we all do our user research, we all do our business requirement needs, we ask have a meeting with our users, our product owners, stakeholders, and everyone. So while doing that, while in the meeting only, there this is the small steps you can do towards it, like question your colleagues, question your business people, question your product owner, that what requirements are there and how we should take the different group of people of users in the account while doing so. So I'll so if anybody wants to say that who are having disability from these three people, a guy in the wheelchair, a lady holding a bag, or the guy with a fracture. So if anyone could answer, it would be great. Anybody from the audience? Bhuvna, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you please ask someone that if there is some audience and could answer this
Yes.
question?
So we've got some answers from the
Oh,
audience. Uh,
okay.
so there are people who believe that all of them have disabilities, and there's one person that believes the person in the wheelchair is disabled.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Bhuvna. I think I'll require your help like this because there are some questions. So I'll ask some questions. So this session does not look like other sessions, like I'm talking to a wall in front of the camera. But I need some audience to, speak or at
Sure.
least write the answers or interact with me. Okay. Thanks, Bhuvna. So yeah, I think majority of the user people have say that three of the people have disability, and that is very true because the one is having a permanent a special ability, the second one is having a situational special ability, and the third one is also having a temporary kind of a disability. So I think that is a situation that if you are building something or if you are building your products, it is important to take all of these situations in the account while doing so. So that is a mindset that we are going to talk about it, and how we could create an impactful product and services and or uh, the craft you are doing. So that is it. Define. So while doing so, we generally have user interviews, right? So there are just some of the generic questions that I have put in the slide. Like you can ask your users, like if they use assistive technologies, because like it happened with me. I belong to a organic user category, so I always think that my users will also be like me. And I generally forgot in the past time, I generally forgot that people with special ability is also there. So I'm not thinking from that perspective, so it is better that you also take user interviews about from those people. And I think that would be a great part, the great learning as well. The people will you know give different perspective, and I think that is very important when you are building something. So how do you need to use assistive technologies? We are going to discuss more about assistive technology as well in the coming slides, but these are the some questions that I have listed. How does your impairment impact or not impact your interactions? Because it is very important. Someone who is organic user category would use mouses, but some of the people use keyboard as their interaction or navigation point of view. What workarounds do you use to get what you need? I think these are the questions that helped me. Now in apart from unlike what kind of a product or what domain you are working on, these are the questions I think that could help. Second are obviously assistive technology. So what is it? So it is any device or software equipment that help people to work around their challenges so that they can learn, communicate, and function better. And obviously different people have different access points. Like I myself use wear glass all the time, so when I'm using a laptop or my phone, I generally use the magnification tool, uh, that is as also a different access point. So yeah, so there are some technologies, all assistive technologies already there in the market, and we should take that into also into account. So that is screen reader, braille and braille embossers, screen magnification software, obviously. So these are the few things that people use, those who have visual impairments or not. Assistive technologies for mobility impairments, keyboards with larger keys, key labels, spacing, illuminated keys, or custom layout, on-screen keyboards. The people who have these, disability or special ability, they people use a different kind of their designed keyboards, like those. If they have motor disability, they can use the screen scanners or something, and trackballs, voice recognition. There are a few technologies that is already available in the market. And then we finally come into the design. This is the very interesting part for me to discuss about this. So there are different domains that we do in the design, right? There is visual design, interaction design, and UX writing. It is also important, before we move forward to the design, I think, for me it is very important to test my prototype with those kind of users, with a different category of users. Because if I am doing so, if I have like have included the research in the design phase, but if my perception is not like what they have expected, I think that is also in vain. So it is always better to have your users who you have interviewed do the accessibility testing as well. There are tools, no doubt, available online as well, that you can do and use it. But I think, obviously, we are using human touch, but this is a place where we should not do that. So moving forward, today we'll discuss about visual design, most importantly, in this. So there is this committee called WAI, who created some guidelines and technical specifications, and they have their online resources available that describe the accessibility solutions to the team. So it is easy for us designers who are designing the web products. We can go to their website and see the guidelines. So there, the guidelines is based on the most important factors, that is four factors, that is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So what is WAI? That is Web Accessibility Initiative. And W3CAG is their guidelines. The latest one is 2.1, and this is based on these four principles. And they have around 14 guidelines and 52 success criterias of all those guidelines. So these are a lot of research they have done. I think we should go into their website and see the guidelines, and you can do a quick checks from there. So they have defined the level of conformance. They are having three levels. A is bare minimum, that is any uh, small things, or any product that we are building, it is bare minimum for us to clear the level A. Second is should achieve this one. If you are building something, we should also at least attend this level, that is double A. And triple A is the golden standard. If any of the product crosses this, I think that is the golden thing. So I'll also discuss one of the case study that happened. So Amazon in 2018 was not so much accessible. So uh, people with visual impairment filed a case, and Amazon had to do something. And at the end, the case obviously ended up in the settlement. But there was something that created very good news about it. I think I should not say the very good news, but that opened up eyes for many of the people, many of the product designers as well, that accessibility is something that we should take into account. So I think that is the story. And also, I don't remember when, but I also heard about a case. uh, Guillermo was the guy who filed a case against Domino's. And Domino's got sued for it, and he recently, won the case. And it was around that he was, even the Domino's website was accessible enough. It had something, it was accessibility compliant, but still he was not able to order the pizza online because he was having some hearing defects. So this was the things. And I think business owners or business people should also take this into account, because when you are doing so, they are also, things that, if you're building something very accessible, that is also including something in your business from the money perspective as well. I always believe that purple pound is the term that, I got it from the internet, that also, earns money as well if your product is accessible. Is so uh, Going forward, accessibility evaluation. So there are some quick checks that you can do. There are some, as I say, the guidelines are already there in the net. Accessibility heuristics by deck is already available, I think. Yeah, so I think 10 heuristics are there by defined by deck that makes your, product accessibility compliant. There are automated tools as well. Some are paid and some are free to use. So web aim wave is the tool that I use most often. So that is a tool which you can use, and you can get the conformance reports as well. Moving forward, so any questions, guys? I mean, am I going in a good speed, or am I speeding very fast and you are not understanding any point, or if I've missed something? Is it okay?
Yeah, it's everything is great. The audience is, yeah, the
Okay.
audience is enjoying it so far.
Okay, thanks Bhuvna for the feedback. Okay, uh, so there is also an accessibility campaign by one of our favorite brands. Uh,
People think that having a disability is a barrier. But that's not the way I see it. You can catch up with friends. Ready? You can capture a moment with your family. One face, small face, focus lock. And you can start the day bright and early. You can take a trip to somewhere new. 3 miles to the summit. You can concentrate on every word of a story.
A bird began to sing. Jack opened his eyes.
You can take the long way home. Or edit a film like this one. When technology is designed for everyone, it lets anyone do what they love, including me.
so this was a story, and this was a very touching video that I saw on the YouTube, and it touched my heart. And I think it is very important for me to, share with you here. So, did you like the video, guys? I mean, just saying, if it is okay that I share videos here, or I should not.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, thanks, Bhuvna. Okay, so going forward with the visual design content, so there are like 8 to 9 pointers that I'll be discussing, so that you can, have this in mind, and we can, practice it in while designing the products. So color contrast is one of the main thing that we should take into account, because, visual representation of text, images of and graphical components needs to have minimum contrast ratio. Even for the people like me or the organic users also find it difficult if we use color with more hues or tints, it strain our eyes. So it is better to have color contrast in such a balanced way that it should not create chaos for anyone. So there are some tools. In fact, Stark is one of the tool which I use more, because that gives me an idea that people with different visual impairments, how they would see colors. Some would have protanopia or color blindness for red and green. How would they perceive that? Or normal people, or people with just working with some of the grayscale color blindness. And there are some other uh, impairments also that are listed in this, and they can use it. Mm, Visual design color dependency. Obviously, it is very good decision if you avoid problematic color combinations. Don't rely on the color to convey message. Obviously, you should have always have the alternative text for it. You know, saying something, and text labels while doing so. Support color choices with labels, icons, and patterns. Uh, Visual design for text, we can use font size which is legible enough. It is not defined like for web we should use only this or that, but I personally use 12 as the minimum of the text title size. And other than that, I do not go beyond 12, or I prefer to use 14 more than 12, but in some cases I use 12, with 150% of line height, avoid light text weights, and enough color contrast. Light text weights is obviously was recently in a trend, but I think that created chaos for the people who are having visual impairments. It was hard for them to read that. So it is always advised to use legible text sizes. Don't create line breaks, define text areas to accommodate to text size increase.
Uh,
Obviously, yeah, sure.
Sorry, Mansi, we're almost out of time, so
Okay,
I just wanted to indicate that to you.
yeah, sure, yeah. Okay. Create scalable interfaces, use font size weight which are easily legible. Moving forward, design focus states is also important, as I said, because people with different visual impairments or motor disability, they use keyboard as their navigation, or some other tools as a navigation, like eye track balls. They don't use direct mouse or something like that. So it is good to use outline. So there is this thing in the CSS also that uses blue as an outline, but if you are replacing it, make sure you do it with something better. Labels, obviously, use text labels especially on forms, because when you start typing it you know goes away. So it is better to use text labels. Alternative text, that is the main thing that you should use if your content is not having any text. So it is the thing that you should use. Visual design, use correct markup on your content. It happens like, if we have defined h1, h2, h3 as a, in a, like if h1 is 20, h2 is 18 and something like that, but if you are using h3 before h1 or something like that, that create chaos, because the tags they are giving, it should create chaos for the people who are using different access points while accessing your content. And support keyboard navigation, so always take this into account. And it's the most critical aspects of the web accessibility, because motor disability and visual impairment, and people who use screen readers like my dad, they don't use mouse, because obviously for the different access points. And if you are using any flashing motions or animations or GIF, don't use it. It's with something very speed. If you want to do it, uh, make the flash rate of 3 times per second or something. And the people with autistic spectrum, they do not see, or their eyes got very much strained when you are using yellow color, too much yellow color in the screen. So if you're using that, please don't do that. And it should be in a very different shade of the yellow. And there are some tools that I have listed here, that we can take help of these online tools while taking accessibility in the account. And yeah, that is it, Bhuvna. think I'm up for the questions.
Thank you, Mansi. I'm waiting for the questions from the audience.
Okay.
So one of the questions we have is about the challenges that you have faced yourself as a designer when it comes to accessibility.
Okay, so most challenges were around for me was to convince people that accessibility is important in the team. So no matter, with God's grace, touch wood, I have a good team to work with, but um, now I think they are very much into accessibility, and they put this forward that accessibility is very important factor. But before that, I have to do so much research on it, about the domain in which we are working. So it is important for them to understand that this is not about just users, it is also about business, because that is also creating good graphs for our business as well. So if you want to advocate accessibility, don't just go and tell your teammates that this is we should work on, but have a sure short research, sure short plan that these are the things that we should include, and this is how we should include it. And I think there is sky's the limit. Then I think people will get touched by this move, and I think they will understand the importance of accessibility. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to know. It's so great to know that so many people are, you know, they're understanding the importance of accessibility in digital products as well.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
thank you so much, Mansi. This was a really great talk. So, our next speaker is Marie Cuter. Marie is joining us live from Geneva. She is a UX designer with the International Committee of the Red Cross. So, let's hear it from Marie. Over to you, Marie.
Hello, Guna. Hello, everyone, and thanks for the introduction. So I'll start sharing my screen in 1 second. I work as a UX designer for the ICRC. I'm based in Geneva, Switzerland, and there's actually a lot of snow today, which is crazy. So I hope my internet connection stays okay. Just about my background, I have a background in journalism, a bit of engineering, but not as much as Mansi or Bhakti, and also about project management. I studied UX, which was called usability or ergonomics, about 15 years ago. And I worked mostly in agencies in France and Canada, and now I'm in Switzerland for about a bit more than 10 years. So I'll start sharing my screen. And put that into presentation mode. Buna, if you can confirm when that's working.
Yeah, it's working. It's visible.
Okay, super cool. Thank you. Okay, so today I wanted to talk to you about design for good and how we can, as designers, help those who help. Just a first myth that I wanted to go over about is can design really help? And that's a legit question, and that's a question that we usually have to answer as designers. And well, of course, my point of view is that yes, but for today's presentation, I really wanted to focus on real KPIs, proven figures. So we help final users, of course, everything linked to satisfaction, efficiency, and effectiveness, all that being, of course, encompassed into usability. We also help experts or the métier or the subject matter experts by increasing productivity and increasing engagement. And for these two audiences, final users and the métier, we also help reduce errors. We also help the project teams. We help reduce change requests and also reduce the need for support once the project is launched. And between the métier and the project teams, we also help reduce the training. And finally, for management, we can help as designers decision-making, and also estimations. So of course, there are a lot of other things that we do as designers that can have an added value, but these are only focused on proven KPIs, and we have the figures for all that. And I wanted to show you a few of them. So the most famous probably is this one from the Nielsen and Norman Group, that UX increases key performance indicators by approximately 83%. This is an average, of course, but still mind-blowing. You know, if you go to your business and you tell them, by doing what I do as a designer, I can increase KPIs by more than 80%. That's a pretty big deal. Also, from this study that you find the references here, estimates for build time and costs were 50% more accurate if that was based on wireframes. So we also have the teams estimate the workload. And finally, some KPIs from personal experience. One of the projects I've worked on, we managed to reduce the number of errors from 11% to 2%, which was a pretty big deal. And also reduce some workload from 15 days to 1 day a month. So some tasks that were taking a long time could actually be intelligently managed by the system design to make it really reduced. So you can see how all of this really has an impact, a direct impact on the métier, on the business, on the KPIs. So designers can have an impact, actually. And that's something that you can use when you have to prove your point or to prove your value to your clients or to your managers. Now that we've proven that design can actually have an impact, it's not just only making things look nice, for example. Let's go back to our central question that was designed for good. So how can a designer help? How can one help in case there's a problem or someone is in a difficult situation? And to do that, I'd like to take the example of an injured person. So a person who's suffering, has had an accident maybe, or maybe a sickness, an injured person. How can I help this person? There are several points of view that I can adopt for that. First, I could help this person as an expert. In my example, an injured person, I could help as an expert. For example, I'm a medical doctor, I'm a nurse, I'm a firefighter maybe, and I have the expert skills that allow me to directly help this injured person get better. I can also help as a person. For example, I see the accident, I can call emergency services, I can make sure the person is safe and there's no over accident, that kind of thing. So I can also help as a person. But what can I do as a designer? Is there really something I can do as a designer to help? Of course, we are not all medical doctors or nurses. So as designers, because it's our job, what can we do to help? If we go back to a first graph that was showing our KPIs and our return on investment for different audiences, the injured person here would be our final users. And for them, towards them, we could have direct help. So these are the return on investment that we can have for people, for users. But we can see here the direct impact we could have on users is not really relevant here, because how is this actually going to help an injured person? It could help, but it's not the main help they would need, I would say. But if we look at this graph here, there's another audience here, the experts. And the experts are medical doctors, surgeons, nurses, that kind of professionals who can have, I would say, the biggest positive impact on our final users. And so what can we do for them? Of course, it's indirect help, but by targeting them as designers, we can have maybe a bigger impact on our final users. And we said for experts what we can do for the business, for the métier. We can increase productivity, reduce training, reduce errors, and increase engagement. So let's think about what this means in a humanitarian situation or trying to help people. let's go back to the scheme, and I want to focus really on the experts audience. And for today, we're going to focus on increased productivity and reduced training. So we've proven that we can have an impact as designers on that. But what does it mean in our example, trying to help an injured person? What does it mean for a doctor to reduce the training? And you can think about that for a minute or two as well. It means a lot of different things. Maybe the main ones that, of course, if a doctor needs less training to use a professional solution, then this person can be operational faster and can actually be more efficient into delivering help in the case of an emergency and maybe saving lives. Also, the fact that the training required to use this solution is reduced also means that more medical professionals are going to be able to jump in and use this solution. So we're going to have maybe not one, but maybe 10 people able to use this solution. So helping more people in the end. And also, if my solution is more intuitive and there's less training involved, then even if as a doctor, I'm not using it every day, the time I really need it, I'm going to be able to use it efficiently. And of course, all that has an impact on the final user, is an impact on helping this injured person. Another of our return on investment as a designer is increasing productivity. So what does it mean for a doctor, for example? Of course, if we talk about a factory, for example, we all know what it means to increase productivity. But for a doctor, that would mean maybe that this doctor could see more patients every day, also emergencies and follow up to make sure that everything's going okay after the emergency. Also that this person has more time to spend with each patient. So communication is better and diagnosis is better as well, because they need to have less time involved in using the solution itself. And finally, but also important, that because they have less time put into using solutions or training to use these solutions, the doctor is more comfortable and has more time to rest and less stress. We hope so. And of course, all that also cascades down and has an impact on the injured person. So that was a bit how we could help, like in theory, using our proven KPIs and our return on investment figures from designers and applying it to helping someone and not so much in a commercial context. But it's still theory, so I wanted just to end with an example that I've worked on. You can see here on this screenshot, it's really just an overview, but basically that was the start situation and that was the redesigned situation. It's a digital web application in the public health sector, and the aim was to be able to monitor the quality of the operations in several locations. And of course, the problem with this one was not that it was not functional. It was fully functional and working. But the problem was that the business realized that the management was not able to make decisions based on this interface. So we conducted all the design phases. So we did user research and personas and even business analysis, because of course the two are linked. And in the end, that was the result. So of course, it looks nicer, but more than that, it really had an impact on the business and also on the users. So I just wanted to show a bit of the results. This solution was used by health practitioners to make decisions and basically to be able to adjust when some operations were not successful. So it was quality assurance, really. And I'm not going to get into the detail of that because even I'm not an expert on that. But with the redesign, and what's important here is not the term redesign, but it's really the process that we conducted as designers. So what was taking 15 days before with this starting point solution, no was reduced to 1 day of work per month. So that's pretty significant because in this sector of public health, we're talking about real people on the field. We're talking about people who actually need help. So if we can save 14 days a month to actually help them rather than just working on reporting and exporting things, that's a lot of time to do something really useful. Then we created several overview levels of this data, and all that avoided people to having to print and export to the upper level of management. So instead of doing that themselves, which was taking them a lot of time, because they had to do that every day, and they had to export, make sure the data was right and that was legible, and then they would have to export it and send it, and people would have to read it and all that. So the system was doing that itself in a way that was understandable by everyone. And so all this workload, it stays the same, of course, but it's assumed by the system instead of by the users. So really making life simpler for our business. And it had a direct impact for the users as well, the final users, the people we were trying to help, is that we could identify 25,000 locations that had been missed or poorly covered during this public health operations. And so because we were able to identify that, the management was then able to adjust and to make sure they were not missed next time. And this is not, I just wanted to say, this is not ICRC. This was a totally different project, but in the same kind of humanitarian domain. So with this example, I just wanted to show that, yes, as designers, we can help, and it's something proven. It's not just auto-congratulations or anything. We can help. We can have a direct impact for the business and our users. And often when we think about design for good or design in the humanitarian sector, we directly tend to focus on the final users, the people we're trying to help. And of course, it's a great thing. But as designers, I feel maybe we can maximize the help we're able to deliver and the impact we can have by targeting the experts instead of the final users only. I'm not saying we shouldn't focus on them, but we should also expand our point of view to include the experts into our process. So if we want to help someone, try to figure out who's already there, who's already helping and doing this job of experts helping on the ground. And then think as designers, okay, how can I help these experts? Because then all our efforts will have the chance to have a bigger impact to actually help more people on the ground. And that was it for my presentation today. I hand it over to Buna, maybe if there are questions in the chat.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions for you, Marie, from the audience. So the first question is, how did you define the process for this particular project?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, thank you, Buna. So basically what happened was the business came to us and said, hey, we don't understand. Like, we've done this thing and it's really complicated. Like, there was a lot of technology involved in that. A lot of work. We put a lot of work into that. But even if they are specialized, the business, so the experts, they can't work with that. And we don't understand why. So that's immediately triggered, okay, I'm not an expert in public health. So we need to conduct user research. That was pretty obvious because of the questions they were, the pain points that were there. So the process we put in place was really in exploration mode. So we really started with interviews from these different users. So we interviewed 11 persons who had very different expertise and skills, but everyone linked to the medical domain and everyone with a lot more knowledge about public health than I did. And based on these interviews, we conducted like analysis, a bit business analysis, I would say, identifying what were the pain points and what were you trying to achieve. So what were those persons trying to do on a daily basis was really what helped us identify why the solution was not helping them do that. So then we built personas, and we built also a user journey for all these different profiles. And what was interesting is that once we started building the user journeys, we realized that they were all interconnected. So out of the 11 people that we interviewed, there were maybe, I think it was 5 or 6 different user journeys, but all of them interconnected. And then identifying these interconnections was when we realized, okay, we have to have a system that has different layers of different levels of understanding and reading. And then it was pretty easy because of the interviews to know who needed to see what and when. So then we drafted some wireframes, but more like paper prototype with the business. And we identified one solution that we wireframed, prototyped, were able to test, and then, of course, visual design. And then the solution went live. The technical aspect was simpler on this project because it already existed. So the team was already there. They knew what was possible or not. So we were in direct contact with the developers. So yeah, and it worked. So that was really cool.
Thank you. Another question from our audience is, what is your experience of proactive reach out to the experts for, when you can say, I can help you with the needy, like with the needs for your specific, yeah.
Ooh, good question. Yeah. Yeah, it's not always easy because as designers, I feel like, but this is just a personal feeling. I feel like sometimes it's easy to overlook us, like to think, yeah, well, she's just a designer. She's just making things look nice, and that's it. And sometimes when you're in meetings, and there are very important people, very specialized persons who could tell you a lot about so many specialized things you don't understand anything about. It's really hard to prove, yeah, I think I can help you. And they're like, they don't, I think it's a pretty new design as we see it today is pretty new. And I mean, I would prefer not to say that, but I feel like, I still feel like as a woman designer, people still see me as, the little girl doing some nice unicorns on her side of the room, and that's it. So yeah, as you said, it's proactive. You have to be proactive, propose what you can do. And I would say sometimes it feels a bit, I don't know how to say that in English, frustrating when people ask you just a very small thing, they ask you, okay, can you maybe just do a logo for me, or just a sketch of a tree or whatever? And you're like, oh, I can do so much more, I think. But then I feel like this is when you can be proactive, not just going like promoting yourself, but using any opportunity. Like you hear a team is looking for new slides, and you're like, oh, I can help you with the slides. This is something I can do. And then once you do that, you add a bit more value and you show them, okay, I did that and I did it well. But also I added a little something, and to show you I could do a user journey, and I think that could be helpful for you. And I think our advantage as a designer is that once people start working with us, then they can't stop. They want to continue. So I would say, yeah, as you said, you have to be proactive. I'm not saying going to distribute tracts or anything, or promoting yourself too much, but taking all these little opportunities, even if it seems so little compared to what you think you can do, and take that to be proactive and show a little bit more of what you can do. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final question from our audience is, are there any tools you use to measure the impact?
Yeah, that's another very good question. I think we're all in that at the moment as designers. well, apart from, I think the best way is really user tests. So to do user tests before and then user tests after. I feel like it's the only true feedback you're gonna get. But also, I mean, there are tools like NPS, like the Net Promoter Score, that you can use. There are usability surveys of feedback forms and templates that are standardized. And it's like you ask people, how would you agree with the following sentences? And the first one is, for example, I think that this solution is very easy to use, or I feel this is a very cumbersome solution to use. And people have to check, agree, disagree, that kind of things. I'm not personally a big fan of those because I think the questions are a bit hard for people to understand. Depending on who is the users, I think it's a bit too theoretical sometimes, and you lose a bit of the context. So yeah, I think to get feedback from the real users, just interviews or user tests are the only way that actually makes sense. Then if it's for the business, it's easier because you can have analytics, for example. And also if you use, I don't know, for example, Microsoft 355, then it comes with built-in solutions for tracking analytics and tracking,
Right.
how much time people spend on this activity or another. But it's not something super easy to put in place if it doesn't come out of the box. So for me, and maybe I'm a bit old school for that, I'm still about user tests before and after. And it's part also of this idea of accompanying people. But there are solutions. I'm just, yeah, I don't know, maybe old school about that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marie, for the wonderful talk. So uh, our next speaker is Bhakti Khandekar. Bhakti is a senior manager for user experience with EQ Technologic Pune, India. So join me in welcoming Bhakti. Over to you, Bhakti.
Thanks, Mona. Hope my screen is coming up all right. Hi,
Yeah, it's
everybody. It's
visible.
a pleasure to talk this evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity uh, from UMO. Uh, it's always a pleasure to share and also learn at the same time. And I am really glad to be here on this platform and sharing this platform with the presenters so far. Really interesting talks. What I'm going to talk about is handling priorities in design. Um, about priorities, of course, they come in with every day in the work, outside the work, and so on. It's important to put a thought out there. I thought I might as well share what what I'm doing, and then it has helped so far um, to various individuals, including myself. This talk is intended for almost everybody. So therefore, I've mentioned it on this slide as well. Um, that it's intended for design students, beginners who have just began the design practice, and regular practitioners. It's a thought out there, so you can take it subjectively. What I mean is that I'll be talking about maybe very specific cases at a very high level, but then again, you can always tie them to your specific cases and look at or situations and look at it if that can help. I'd like to hear more, but let's go through what it is. All right. Everybody knows this iceberg analogy. It's pretty much out there already. So I won't be repeating the same thing, but just to set the context of where we'll go next, what typically shows on the screen takes a lot of effort, skills, work at the back end. There are elements involved, like how we see in the JJG model. There is surface upfront where the user interacts with the products, applications, and so on. But there are other layers that also come into the picture. So usually it's the top bottom approach where the users actually experience the products, while as the designing it's actually the bottom up, wherein the all the work behind shows up when the interface really becomes intuitive as they go along. There are several faculties are involved as the design progresses of an application of a product for a project, be it for a student level or a practitioner. It doesn't escape anybody. It's almost the same. So there are various faculties that come into picture nowadays. I'm really glad to see that the design education has gone far and have collaborative efforts from various skill sets and faculties of design to work together. It's really glad to see that. So more so when this all comes together, it is more the insight or more the insight driven design. The design goes beyond of current what the current scope of work would be, and therefore the experience factors also get bloomed further from there. So this is at a very, very high level. But then again, there are technicalities that one needs to go through in the day in life situation while designing the solution. However, if we see that all of this comes together in terms of design, but then again, when we are to achieve this, there is a challenge. So, from an organizational perspective, even for projects for that matter, there is on the right hand side, there are deliverables. Now, we talk about what is it that is set to be achieved. Yeah, in terms of quality, in terms of time it takes, and making those outcomes happen. At the same time, on the other hand, a designer typically would see that, okay, this particular design has needs, and therefore those needs need to be taken up step by step and such. So there is a need to strike that balance. So how do we do that, right? So usually I'm categorizing this into two buckets. So let's talk about the first bucket as organization. So number one priority for an organization are the immediate deliverables, especially that comes into picture where customer commitments or the features inside. Typically in a education situation, it would be those projects that are in the current semester and so on. So those are the all the immediate aspects that need to be catered to. So be it an organization or education, it would still be the immediate scope that comes into the first priority bucket. Now this bucket could be subjective from individual to individual, organization to organization, and also from team to team for that matter. The second bucket, I would say, is what we can actually list as the next in line. So when we say next in line, it would be the upcoming deliverables. It could be the next release. It could be the next semester, like that. If we can identify that bucket and keep it listed, I think that helps. That helps because then we are able to take it step by step. And we'll talk about that step by step approach in a bit. So this is the second bucket, which really needs not the immediate treatment, but then a little bit of more thought process where we can take some more time on their ideations, conceptualizations, understanding the needs, and putting a solution, articulating it well together like that. So that becomes a second bucket, which has a slightly longer timeline. The other faculty of these priorities would be the UX practice. Typically, it's a tug that happens that these are the deliverables, but then again, how do we make them UX healthy? How do we protect the user experience aspects when we are doing these projects, we are working on to these projects, assignments, and so on? Even the releases sprints for that matter, whosoever practices agile will be able to relate to this. So then again, the third bucket that comes into picture are proposals. So usually when we see we have been working with different assignments, be it over a product or be it over different applications, sites, websites, and so on, apps, mobile apps, and so on. Uh, it never escapes a designer to see what is not falling in line. And therefore, we can create this third bucket wherein we can keep it listed. What is it that I would like to improve given time? It is good to reflect on work usually. That helps us as individual designers also. It helps the organization to have this bucket identified, especially when the organization is set to have a roadmap. It helps to influence the roadmap when this bucket is actually put in place. The fourth bucket is where a person's own foundation, the designer's own foundation, the UX team's own foundation, the student's own foundation of understanding what is the underlying process that I should be aware of. What are the governance factors? What is it that I should take care of? So we heard Mansi talk about one of the aspects called accessibility. So that also comes into picture. What is it that I need to be sensitive about so that I can make sure that there is enough credibility and quality enough for that particular deliverable, that project, that assignment to be of a better quality. So my today should be better than yesterday. My tomorrow should be better than today. How do we do that? So that's the fourth bucket where we need to be mindful of what does it really take to make it all happen. Hope these categories make sense. I'd like to hear more about how do you see these categories, and we can talk more about that later on. So if we look at priority one bucket, that's the immediate deliverables. Usually this kind of bucket would have a very fixed timeline that it has to be this from this date to this date and so on. Very crisp scope for that matter, the overall alignment of what all is required in terms to have this particular set of projects or assignments or features, backlogs for that matter. What is it that is pretty much crisp and is a finite timeline also. The P2 bucket, the priority 2 bucket that we talked about is about next in line, wherein the requirements are hazy. There is a need of point research. So this gives an opportunity to do that point research at least, and then have the necessary alignments. Usually in applications, when there are siloed applications, alignments are limited to that particular group of people. We heard Mary talk about experts. So the experts from the so aligning the thought process from the experts into the design solution is very important. But then again, it does take time. We heard her. So it does take time to work upon that aspect proactively, subjectively for instances and such. And then bring about the ideations which may work, may not work. Failing early is good. So having the ideations in picture and then driving to the design solution. So when we foresee the next in line, it is good to have a parallel track for P2. While P1 is a fast track, I would say, for lack of better words, P2 would be a slightly slower track compared to P1. But then again, this is also finite because we see that it is a next in line. This is something that needs to be step next to be delivered and such. But having that bucket identified helps us. P3 is where the practice is concerned. So this is where usually complex solutions, hazy requirements, multiple stakeholders, those aspects come into picture. It's good to have this kind of track identified, wherein we look at what are those hazy requirements. Even they are hazy, that's fine. In fact, it's good to thrive in the haziness of it, so that then we get the opportunity to bring some more articulations about design around. Yeah. And then involve some level of foundation work of what is it that this kind of need really requires, be it a project or be it any assignment as such. Usually these kind of assignments would require multiple touch points. So these are experts and then the people who on the ground. So these would be kind of the experts, the promoters and actual developers also for that matter, or even the subject matter experts for that matter. So bringing those touch points together to have a periodic proof of concept, whether this works or that works and so on, because there are so many dependencies that happen. And I'll give example for all these priorities in a bit. So that is this bucket P3, and P4 is about a long standing. It would be almost like um, the slowest of the track is P4. So P1 considering the fastest of the track, P4 is you can consider as the slowest of the track. This is where there is probably no requirement documented per se, but then again there is a need that can be cited. Usually these are cited more by UX designers because this is more to do with the UX practice and to be true to that practice. So this is where there is a need to build a basis, have the necessary resources in place, uniform or unite those resources, consolidate information from various aspects, and bring over alignments, for that matter. This is something which doesn't come up on an organizational radar unless the need goes really critical. But what I'm here to say is, let's identify that need early on. So now coming to the P4 bucket, where these needs need to be identified and such, I think I need to give examples here. So P1 bucket is what I spoke about, where it is that project in the semester or that project in this particular timeline, or customer commitment, backlogs, features, and so on. P2 would be similar, fall in line, where on the horizon, next in line needs or backlogs or projects next semester for from an education perspective and such. P3 would be more about, it could be more about, for example, bringing together a design system, for an example, or having some level of basis of what would it would be to have maybe a consistent approach, patterns per se, for various areas into an application or into a product. Or what is it that would bring about more design hygienes, probably bringing together those design principles which are extremely important to do P1 and P2 more effectively. So that bucket, as an example, could be P3. Like I said before, these examples could be very subjective. So you have to identify what is it that is P3 for you. I hope this helps. P4, as an example, I would say it is more about compliances. So what is it? So accessibility is one area of such compliance. Again, the fundamentals of design system can percolate to P4 as well, where the need of it itself, and how and where it should not fail. It should not constrict the creativity. At the same time, should be able to establish a sound foundation. So those are the examples of these four. I hope the examples help to understand these four buckets. Eventually what would happen is, when we improve and mature in these, so this is what happened with me as well. When we improved and matured with these four buckets, we were able to percolate or have P4 grow into P3 in the matter of time, and then from P3 to P2 and so on. So usually when a project is or a particular need is of a longer timeline, there could be multiple P1s within that long timeline to achieve smaller milestones and then eventually result into a P4. All right. But then again, looking at these from an organizational perspective, yes, and those project pipeline and upcoming projects and assignments and semesters and all that makes sense, all right. But then again, at an individual level, there is a challenge. There is a challenge each designer experiences a tug there of keeping up with the responsibilities and aspirations, and having a tug there. How do I make sure that what I do actually falls in line with my aspirations? How do I make sure that the aspirations that I have are actually have some level of practicality? Does impact me as a matured designer for times to come and such. So how do I make a surer progression, apply my learnings and goals, but yet again do not have any compromise on the responsibilities, because that's what is going to help me take the next steps and such, right? So therefore, maybe this can help me as well. So one is, there are three prospects. One of it is self. We would know what is the skill alignment required, even if there is some level of learning to be done, unlearning to be done, and also new learnings to be done, or trend keep up and such. So that is something one one should be able to keep a tab on for themselves. What is the skills I have learned so far, and what is it that I want to do next, and such. Keeping in mind what we have learned so far on the P1 to P4 buckets, like that. What is a requirement of a particular assignment? It's quite possible that two assignments do have different quotients of skill. So one might require a better research, other might require a better visual design, and so on. So it depends on how important do we make that level of assessment of what does that assignment require, what quotient to tune up and tune down from time to time, and then set the goals accordingly for ourselves. So self is very important, of how do we see, what is it that we want to groom ourselves on, and such. The second part is to have a toolbox, to have a, so this bucket I call as process. So have a toolbox where, okay, these are my set of softwares, these are my what to say, comfortable procedures and templates, or comfortable is one part of it, but also this is something that are required by that particular type of assignment, so that it one gives justice to whatever comes their way, like that. So a toolbox, a timeline, there requires to be a timeline, and then this in itself. So each of this is actually a topic in itself, but I wanted to touch upon it so that we keep this in a perspective and help ourselves to take the next steps and such. Yeah. So having a timeline, so starting with UX runways, probably to have some time before we actually start on the work, or to have a design sprint. So this is very typical of an agile kind of an environment, to have a timeline before the actual implementation starts, to put a solution together and such. The third part of it is level of ground rules. So every game requires a strategy. Every game requires set of rules and players and such, and then the players' abilities. So abilities come into the self bucket, but those rules and those patterns do come into the process bucket. And the third is the project or assignment, or what is it that that needs to get impacted by the efforts of the self and the process coming together, would be the actual project and assignment, like that. So that is where making the inroads to go through the roadmap, make in time and in quality, the output sound and be more robust of the goals that it needs to achieve. So this is where the actual mapping of UX goals will happen to business goals. Of course, this needs to be measured time and again using the correct matrix, so that the right progress and steps can be made from time to time. So this all is all right, but then again, how do we start? So a lean mean start usually helps. So it could be per project. So if I identify these aspects per project, per assignment, per release, that would help, and then extrapolate it to a year, a duration maybe, or across releases. Those who are practitioners, they can take this as across releases. For students, it could be a year or a duration, like that. And then it could be for that particular community. So whether it is a UX team, or whether it is a group of like-minded individuals, how can we make that impact happen? And that also helps to learn further and take more steps. So it could be at your site. So for practitioners, usually we are multi-sited, we uh, work across geographies. How is it that I can impact or make more people aware, design aware, from my surrounding, be it my office, my location, like that, my team to start with, and then those experts that we engage with to make the further co-creation happen for design and such. So it could be a lean start from self, and then for a particular project, and then grow it uh, time and again, like that. And then the other part of it is, as this grows, as the scope grows for ourselves, it will also help us to understand what is it that I need to try hands on, what is it that I need to hone as a soft skill and such. So that will help. So this, in total, this should help to understand what is it that is required out of me, and how do I take it ahead from there. So we saw the priorities, That is the first part of it, the P1 to P4 buckets. We saw um, what is it, those aspects that can help to take a step at a time, and then putting this together, probably this should help all of us to understand what is it that I should do now and then and later and future. So these could be our own P1, P2, P3, P4 buckets for that matter, and that should help. Yep. So bringing the one, twos together to make the threes, like that. And now I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you, Bhakti. That was such a great talk. So, we have a couple of questions for you coming in from the audience. So, one of the questions is where do you bring in UX strategy in the mapping? Bhakti? It looks like we've lost Bhakti. Uh, she should be back on, hopefully. Hi, Bhakti. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, please.
So we have one question from the audience, and
Yes.
the question is, where do you bring in UX strategy in the mapping?
Okay. So UX strategy actually, these are the steps that help to form a UX strategy. So if we look at the P4 bucket, that is where one would need to plan. How is it that I need to structure? Because UX strategy typically takes the planning into picture. It also takes what is it that is required to get that level of plan done. So the UX strategy is benefited out of all these aspect that I just started to talk about. Where does it come into picture? It comes right in the beginning, where we draw these buckets actually, and then one is able to plan what needs to be done now, next, and such. That way, those projections would work for a UX strategy.
Okay, thank you. Another question from the audience is what would be some advice that you would give to a student that is starting out in the field of UX in order for them to become a successful professional?
All right. It's a wonderful question, because usually what happens is the it's a very wide bucket that confronts a student. So it is important to identify what is it that you're really interested in. At the same time, what is it that you're really good at? And usually this helps. This comes from how much hands-on can one get onto the work, various assignments that one can get into, and these could be any kinds of assignments. That way it helps also to get information on what is it that one is interested in. So that way it helps to put those two and two together and make a choice.
Okay.
So certain individuals could be really interested in the research part of it, because the analytical side of it kind of gives a kick that way. While as there are individuals who would be best of their abilities in doing visual thinking, and really would be really good with patterns and colors and such. So that way one can take those paths.
Okay, that's great. And one final question is will this process that you just, you know, explained today, will this process work in the agile environment?
It has been working in the agile environment so far. In fact, there have been situations where agile did not uh, consider UX as a starting point, but it did help to create some level of inways in having this kind of process. Yes, it helped.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you so much, Bhakti. It was such a
Thank you.
great talk. So now it's time for our panel discussion. Our first three panelists are Mansi, Marie, and Bhakti. Our fourth panelist today is Divya Krishnan. Divya is a senior UX designer with Amazon and is based out of Canada. This panel discussion will be moderated by Rohan Sridhar, the co founder of Happening Design Studio. Happening is a new age global UX design and research studio based out of NYC and Hyderabad. So let's welcome our panelists and our moderator.
Thank you so much, Bhuvana, and a very warm welcome to all the panelists. I think we've been having a great set of talks going on today. Very excited to talk to all of you. I hope all of you are set up and ready to go. Awesome. So I think we have a great mix of panelists today. We have some of you who are self-taught designers and who really have made quite a bit impact in your careers, and we have some who have gone through the traditional route and are going through a great career path themselves as well. So I'm here to ask a few questions on how your careers have been spanning out so far, and how you've gone through the journey and how you've successfully been able to create that impact that you are currently doing. So to start with, I will want to kick off by asking, how have you decided to actually make the shift to design? So maybe Divya, you can start us off.
Yeah, hi Rohan, hi everyone. It's really great to be a part of this panel. By the way, great talk, Mansi, Bhakti, and Mary. So, so the shift happened very gradually for me. I completed my computer science engineering, and I was working with Qualcomm. I started off my career with Qualcomm. Back then, I don't know if UX design was more of a career in itself. This was just around 8 years back. So it kind of gradually started. It was more of a mix of UX UI together, and then after Qualcomm, I co-founded a health tech startup, during which I have been extremely fortunate to have so many mentors around the world, who kind of educated me on the importance of design. And for me, working with the customers in the front end has been extremely exciting than working in the back end. Talking to the customers, learning the goals, learning about business goals, trying to kind of combine these together to create products that's more beneficial for users and business is very exciting for me. So that initial research, that initial phase has been exciting. So that's how the shift happened. I do not really have a postgraduate in design, but yeah, I mean, it was more gradual change, like over 3 years.
That's great. Manasi, would you like to add on to that?
I think Divya rightly mentioned that transitioning from an engineering background. I also did my computer science in engineering, and then I moved to UI UX. And I think in design as a whole, if we see, there is a very thin line difference between UI and UX. It is all design, if I see that way. And I think, yeah, it was a gradual shift, as Divya rightly mentioned, and it is still in the process. I feel I'm not, have reached at the expert level, or at the level where I can, uh, where I proudly say that no, I am a UX designer, or I am doing something better that impacts a greater audience or a greater thing in the society. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a skill, so it does take time to acquire it. Even if you've gone the traditional route and learned design on your own, either way, I think it's a process, definitely. Bhakti, would you like to add on to that? I think you have a lot more experience, so I'm looking to get some interesting insights from you.
Sure. Sure, design is intriguing actually, but at the same time now, this is for me. It is kind of 20 years now. So back then, awareness of such field even exists, it was something which was rare. Not that it was not there, but the information coming to individuals was pretty much rare, I should say. And therefore, you might see that some individuals actually, for lack of information, do take different routes. But then again, dreams do catch up, not if not early, then later on they do catch up. So it is that way. For me it happened, in fact, as soon as I got into the senior education and such. So I started with graphic design being my liking, and then on, from there on, the journey really started, and it was all exploration. So what I said, I say again, that what is it that I am good at, and what is it that I'd like to do, are the two things that kept the tug happening. And then the quest also was there, of learning more, exploring more, and such. So from graphics to animations and then into product design, I think it is around more than 12 years now into product design. So user experience is a completely different aspect. Given there are subtleties in faculties of design, it's a completely different aspects where various areas come together. So that way, it's all about what do you want to try hands on, and that's what happened with me. uh, so being a master's in computer management, it really was not a formal design education, but design was all around, just that it took some time to get my head around it. So it's like that. But ever since, there have been wonderful people and wonderful journeys, assignments that I got onto, which kind of kept me going on, and it still keeps me going on.
So, Bhakti, I also see a lot of shift where even traditional or self-taught visual designers are moving into UX. So, I think you have gone through that change as well. So, what are your thoughts on that?
So it's about how do you understand the word experience. So when it is the visual design, it is more moving from the top, the cosmetic layer, to insides, to workings inside. So what makes it happen? So it's not just about what is it that makes the cosmetic layer more, more engaging. It is the works also. So once one realizes that, it's great to have that kind of shift happening for individuals, from visual design, where it is more visual in nature at the first, and then it goes into subtleties of what is it that brings those experiences via those visuals, and then creating visual experiences even more better for applications and products. That's good to go. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that insight, Bhakti. Moving on to Marie, I think you have a pretty interesting background where you come from a communication and journalism background. So how has your shift into design been so far?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Rohan, and thanks everyone for your backgrounds. I have a slightly different background, I would say, maybe. Um, I started with journalism and communication because I thought the new technologies were going to change that a lot, and so I started studying engineering to complete journalism and communication. And when I got out of my master's degree, I started to work as a project manager in communication agencies. And for print material, we have wireframes. So, for example, if you do a magazine or a brochure, there's something that's called wireframes, where you actually just the same as UX. You just put, blocks and areas of what you want, what kind of content, where you want it, and that. And as the projects quickly got more digital, I started extending that to digital projects. And at first it was 20% of my time, and quickly it became 100% of my time when I moved to Montreal in Canada, because I think things were a bit more advanced there at the time than it was in France, where I come from initially. And so I would say my transition, not from engineering, but from information and communication, happened like on my everyday job. And that's when it happened. And I kind of surfed that wave. And that's how I became UX or usability consultant, how we called that at the time.
I think it is amazing how you're able to relate what you've done previously to UX design. I think that's pretty amazing. Thanks for that, Marie. So the next thing I would want to move on is usually when you go the traditional approach to learning design, you have somebody who's guiding you through the process and who's there's a certain curriculum or there's some sort of a structure present. But when you're going it on get it on your own, there are some challenges that you might have faced learning or through mentorship or whatever it might be until the time you got a job or did something uh, substantial in the UX area. So, Divya, starting with you, could you maybe talk about some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah. Like first of all, I was not aware what is design actually. Like how do you basically define what are the things that you need to learn to become a designer? Those were things that are not like that were not clearly out there. Like there were too many things. What should I concentrate more on? What would be useful? So back then when I was working for my company, I took up things that would be useful for me, like at that time, to build that product and to basically deliver that particular product. And as I moved on to consult for different companies, different startups, again, as I went by, I took care of different things that I would have to learn. So how do I basic things like how do I even do a user research? What are the kind of questions that I have to ask? How do I approach them? How do I prioritize designs? How do I understand the impact that my design is actually going to make, so that I kind of work backwards from that? How do I understand the technicalities or any technical constraints or product or business level constraints that might come up? So these are things that kind of that was something that I learned on the job. But the most challenging part was the part about the visual design, because so when it comes to visual design, there are a lot of technicalities that gets involved. I had to build my own design system. I was not sure what is the right pixels to use, like basic things like that. How do I design for this? How do I scale, make it responsive, and things like that. So what I was doing was, I used to read a lot on Medium. It's very basic. Nobody generally goes for Medium, but what I like about Medium is, or any blog for that matter, is that for a single topic you will have multiple designers basically write about it, where you get multiple different perspectives around how they are thinking about it, learning more about case studies, how are they approaching problems. I mean, lot of YouTube videos. So my learning was more like here and there. Like I just go where, if I want to find something, I'll just go to the internet and just find that. I'll see what are the different approaches that they take. It was not very straightforward. I also had mentors whom I kind of reviewed my work, get their feedback, industrial mentors and also mentors in the startups, which was very useful for me. So these were some, and I think today you have Coursera, Udemy, like so many courses that kind of offer you basics around where to start for people who are kind of not aware where they should start from. So for me it was more on the job. So it was very challenging because I don't know whether whatever I'm reading, whatever I'm trying to absorb is right or wrong in the first place. I validated that by seeing if my product is creating impact or not. If not, I'll kind of iterate, like improve, work on it. Yeah, and another great tool that I like, this might be kind of out of context as well. It's called as growth.design, which talks about different case studies, different products, how do they think about design. So these are a few things that are really these were helpful for me as well when I kind of design my product. So yeah.
Great. I think a pretty solid approach, and I think it's great that you got the opportunity to learn on the job. I think
Yeah.
these days, I think with a large influx of UX designers in the market, it's definitely more tougher
Yes.
to get a UX role without a good portfolio or a good background. So, pretty great.
Yeah, even
Mansi, do you want to?
even for the sorry, even for the portfolio, creating a portfolio, I used to read so much. Like, what is the right approach? How
Correct.
do I go about it? I took a lot of things from my startup experience as well, like because when we go to investors, how do we convince them? So maybe create a similar pitch deck which works for design portfolios as well. So yeah.
Absolutely great advice. Manasi, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I think, I came from a background where I wanted to be an RJ, radio jockey. So there is this little story behind this designer. I have literally got selected for one of the internship from the one of the renowned uh, FM station, and then I told my dad that I wanted to be an RJ, and he supported me. And somehow, when there was the last campus interviews were going on, I just thought that okay, I'll try for this as well. Let's face the interview, how it goes. Let me check the technical side of mine, and I got selected. So I was like, okay, I had no career plans. I was not doing any design field, and I came from a background where design is a field that is even existing was the thing that I was not knowing that. So I started my career, and somehow they selected me for the pre-sales thing, which I got to know after landing up on that job. But I said that I have to do some project for the last year, and for that internship, I have to do something. So I don't like coding at all. So you have to give some options, and they said that okay, design is the option where you can show something, and that is a technical field as well. Then I researched about it for a week. Then I said, okay, if this goes well for 6 months, then I'm continuing. Else the RJ job is already there. So I started that internship, and there were the team was very good. I feel that there were only 22 designers at that time when I landed up on my first job in the design department itself. So I thought that it is a great learning for me. I'll do something, and for that 6 month, I just tried to explore. And my mentors were very good. They taught me the tools, the design, and everything. But I completed my project, and then I have to agree that okay, now what I have to decide, like, am I going to continue with the design, or it was just playing for me. But so I have to decide at that time, and that made me real serious from that time. And I decided to continue. There are I usually say to my manager, like, now I am committed to the design. I am at a stage where I can commit to design. I'm not sure if I'm going to marry or not the design field, but yes, I'm committed to this field. So this was the case, and there were very limited resources. I was not aware about the tools that we use. I was not about aware about the process and all. So that took a lot of time for me to learn the design, and uh, apply my design thinking in the process. So I was not knowing the terms, then I was not able to connect the dots. And this
Got
was
it.
the challenging. Yeah, so those were the challenging part. But then, yeah, it happened that way.
Great. Absolutely. I think some very valid points there. Thanks for that, Mansi. So I'd like to move it on to Marie to maybe talk about some of the challenges you faced.
Yeah. So yeah, the challenges I faced, I think at the time when I started, and that was 15 years ago, there was not really a definition of what is design and what is UX. The term didn't exist itself. So I think one of the challenges is that it's hard to sell what you're doing to people when no one can actually understand what you're talking about. So I think that was one of the challenges, but it's getting better because now it's getting more popular and people know what you're talking about.
But
And
does it
another
matter
challenge is, I
anymore
would
that you're
say,
not a, sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to add a question there that does it matter anymore that you're not a traditionally taught designer after so many years in the industry?
yeah, I think so, because some people, like you go to them and you say, hey, I'm a UX designer, and they hear something and another person could understand in a totally different way. So yeah, at the time, no one was talking about that, and so no one had preconceived ideas, I would say. But now everybody's heard about that, and everybody has preconceived ideas. So you have to make sure, okay, you're coming to me for design needs. What exactly are you expecting? What kind of design do you have in mind? So yeah, I think it's the opposite. The situations are very different, but the questions or the challenges are a bit the same. And another challenge was maybe communicating with more technical profiles. That can be hard, especially as the technologies are changing as fast as they are today. You cannot, as a designer, be a specialist in all those technologies. It's just impossible. I mean, we can talk about web development, we can talk about native mobile apps, we can talk about tools like SAP or proprietary softwares like Microsoft Dynamics, for example. So of course you can do design on them, but you cannot be an expert on all of that. So I would say the challenge lies for me here into drawing this line, and it's a fine line between becoming a technical expert, and it's just impossible to master in all the different technologies, and giving your design approach. And I think that's where your added value lies. And that's what must drive your communication with more technological profiles, and also apply what we know about user research and empathy and collecting data also to the technology, making sure what we do, what we design is actually feasible and makes sense technologically speaking, if that makes sense.
So, have you made a shift after you started your career in design into a more specific or a more niche field in design? Did that happen along the process?
Yeah, I think it happened along the way. Like, I really have this project approach. I like working on new projects. So every time a new project comes, but I think it's the same for all of us, right? Then it's a new project, maybe a new technology, and you have to learn new things. So yeah, it's just how life happens, I would say.
Great, great. Thanks, Marie. Bhakti, I have a slightly different question for you, keeping in mind the time aspect. So,
Sure.
I understand that you're hiring a lot of designers. So, how do you evaluate somebody who's just got into UX without a traditional background, and how do you hire them?
Well, traditional background or no is a debate. So it really matters
Absolutely.
how aware a person is and how into it a person is. I have seen traditional design graduates sometime fall way below the expectations. I have
Absolutely.
seen people from almost any walk of life way above expectations. So all range of that in these many years. I wouldn't say it is like in a very small window of time, but over the period I've seen that. It doesn't. By no means, and with due respect, I've got a very high regards because all my mentors have been from very esteemed design colleges, so
Okay.
they have been there, done that, and therefore whatever they imparted to me, and today I'm extremely grateful to each and every individual. In fact, that's the reason why I am still connected with academia, because somewhere that hunger is still there, and therefore I do engage a lot with academia, with young minds. It's almost a very thriving experience.
Absolutely.
I always say I do not know how much they learn from me, but I learn leaps and bounds. So having said that, my approach to looking at any individual for that matter is not about where they come from. It is more about
True.
what they have got, because that's exactly what is required to do to get the job done, and to get the
Correct.
job done with the quality. Sometime so it's quite susceptible for anybody to say that quality is something that can be compromised over timelines, but it has never
Correct.
happened like that for me in my whole career. So therefore, quality is it's at its peak. So if a person is
Absolutely.
able to measure what they do in terms of the design solutions that they have done, even if it is a proxy project, a dummy project, and get a learning out of that and still improve it further, that definitely
Got it.
makes a year mark.
Absolutely. I think in that regard, the trend is that traditional education in general, a lot of people are opting out, at least at a master's level. I think we see that trend beyond, but that's again some great input there, Bhakti. So,
Thank you.
Divya, I have a different question for you. We're talking about portfolio. So, what are some of the things that you were looking at or that made you actually land a job in UX? Maybe made you design your portfolio that way?
Yeah, so different things. So first is when we hire today, like when we hire designers, again, as Bhakti said, it's not what they've studied or what their background is that we look at, but
Right.
more around what is the work that they have done. For me personally, I think the project could be a proxy project, but it needs to be real. It needs to kind of, you need to talk about the impact, and you need to kind of even there are many cases where impact might not be available, maybe it's still under development and things like that, but
Hmm.
at least you need to know what you are measuring, where you are going with the project. So when with respect to portfolio, I think these are few things. Like when I, let's say, I create a portfolio, I again talk very clearly about the customer problem, what are the researches that we do, any data around the customer problem, and having a very data driven approach to your design case studies could make the project more real. Having data around conversions, how many users clicked through certain things, or whatever, based on whatever problem that you're trying to solve, having a very data driven approach would always make it more real to the end customer. I mean, end customer in the sense, a person who is trying to interview you. So and also clearly calling out the impact, because most of the times things that I see missing out in many portfolios is the impact, because they say the project is still under development, so I might not. That's fine, but you will still know what you are actually expecting, what is the outcome you're trying to get out of your design or your project, right? So I think that is something that is very important, and it needs to always map to the customer problem that you're referring to. Sometimes that connection kind of misses as well. So when it comes to portfolio, I think your case study, even if it's going to be one or two, even if you're a junior designer or a designer who's starting new, I think few things that they can explore is trying to freelance even for free. That is because when you try to work with a real client, um, you also learn more about different technical constraints, or different constraints that they might come up with, timeline constraints, technical constraints, prioritization level constraints. So these are few things that you can also mention in your case study, because when you try to navigate a larger organization, these are things that also come into picture, right? And also when we talk about this, for me personally, after shifting to design, when you come to a real job, especially in a large organization, one of the things that come to you is how do you convince your team or your other stakeholders worldwide, or within your geolocation, on why your design has to work. So how do you back your design up? So for that is where all these design laws, customer research, talking to customers, validating usability, everything comes into picture. And this is not something that you learn. I don't know if you learn in a design school, but this is something that you need to kind of develop, trying to disagree and commit, trying to kind of put forth why your design works, what are the different hypotheses that you tested, why do you think this is the best design that should go out. So these are few things that you should again call out in your portfolio, which most of the time gets missed out. It's not just about the final design. The final design could just take up one slide or something like that, but the whole process of how you came up, how you identified, how do you work well with your stakeholders, how do you understand data and translate that into design. These are technicalities that could land you in in larger organizations. So yeah.
Got it. Great. That's great advice, Divya. Mansi, I think we have only a few minutes left, so I'll leave it to you to talk about that.
So Rohan, like I do not have an experience of um, like taking interviews. I do not have, but
You
I
can
have.
talk about building your portfolio, how you've actually designed your portfolio and how it was successful that you got a job with it.
Yeah, correct. So I gave few interviews, and my portfolio carries one project that is a very important project for me because it transitioned my career from UI to UX. So that was about a machine. That machine we are converting it into a real application. So from that machine will drive, and that machine will operate from your mobile application, and that was the point that project actually transitioned my career. So at that point of time I felt that your team is very important. um, like there are different domains that you work on, you carry experience, you build products, you make your business persons and users happy. Obviously that is the thing that we are here as a UX designer, but I think to work with a team, that is very important to have that tuning, because uh, if the team does not, if development team does not allow that, this design won't work, or this is very challenging for us to develop or something like that. I think it is very important to address those issues in the very beginning, in while defining the problem statement, while creating personas or everything. That is very important for your team to acknowledge your design decisions. And
Correct.
I think that is a key takeaway for all the portfolio builders. That, as Divya and Bhakti rightly said, that having a portfolio is very important, and that should be a real thing. That should not
Right.
be any dummy projects or anything. So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Manasi, for your perspectives. I think we have a few more minutes, so I would like to quickly go through everybody and take your closing notes, maybe starting with Bhakti. Any closing notes for the audience watching?
So it's a wonderful platform, and design is not a design till you express it and take a reciprocation. So it's been a wonderful chapter this time around. I've been through the earlier sessions as well. um, and talking about it, expressing about it, and then hearing out others is really good. And then collaboration is what it is all about, because until that reciprocation comes around, it's difficult to understand where is one. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Great piece of advice, Bhakti. Thank you. Divya?
Yeah, yeah, the sessions have been great. One last note that I kind of want to, what I have benefited from, and also as Bhakti mentioned, mentorship. We often don't understand the importance of it. So I would say for any junior designers or designers who are trying to transition, try to find a mentor, uh, have a coffee time with them, maybe a virtual coffee time. Engage with them, frequently to kind of learn, see where you would want to go. I think that really creates a lot of impact, brings in a lot of change, and would definitely accelerate your career growth. You don't have to do this only when you're transitioning. I still have mentors outside and within my workplace, so it is important to have mentors throughout your journey, because you need to keep moving towards the next goal. So have frequent sessions, repetitive sessions with your mentors, and that really helps you grow, helps you learn as well, because design is growing every day, it's changing every single day. So
Absolutely.
you need to like kind of learn
Absolutely.
with that. So as tech evolves, technology evolves, you probably find mentors in that space, try and understand. I think that really helps.
Great, Divya. I think I absolutely agree with you. Thanks for that. Manasi, quick closing thoughts, please.
Uh, yeah, sure, Rohan. So as Divya and Bhakti rightly said, that mentorship is the one key element that make your career prosper in the lot of different ways, not just design but in a lot of other different ways. So that is the one point. And for me, I think second point is that design is not just about you know uh, making the designs wonderful or making the things look wonderful from the cosmetic perspective, but it should be impactful when the people are using your product. And when you see that people are using your products in such an easy and delightful manner, that kind of increases the happiness quotient in me, I feel. And that motivates me a lot to do more about them, to more advocate more about users, and make my designs more usable and accessible as well. Yeah, that's it.
Great, great. Thanks, Manasi. Just to add to all of your points, I think at UMO we've been doing a lot of these things. Like we have a great set of mentors. So anybody watching, please do reach out not just to the panelists here, but to the UMO community as well for any help that you would need. And we also have our UMO design school through which we are trying to educate a lot of people and offering a lot of scholarships for people who can't afford to learn design. And we're doing various other initiatives. So Divya, Mansi, and Bhakti, thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful Women in Design initiative. It's been very pleasant talking to all of you on a Saturday night. So thank you so much and have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.